Well. A new year equals a new video.
Oh boy, it's time for a new year to begin. 2021 as a year has its ups and downs, but now we're looking forward to 2022. Me, I'm looking forward to what cool video games are releasing that year. What are my most anticipated titles coming out that year, you ask? Well, we're finding out right now, as I'm making this my first top 10 video. That's right, my first top 10 video will be about video games I'm excited to play this year when they come out. And by top 10, I meant 11 in this video because I honestly didn't want to get the last one on my list out of it. So yeah, let's say that countdown video won't be like others, but hey, at least different isn't bad.
Now I'm talking about my two things for this video. The first is that due to a lack of time, I'm not putting every video game confirmed to release in 2022 at the time of me writing this video in this list. But hey, do I really need to? And second, in order to be on that list, its release date, at least for now, has to clearly be the year 2022, and that's it. But it can release whatever month or day the devs of these games can think about releasing their games at. Or in other words, at the very least, just the year 2022, and that's it. No need for a confirmed release month or day, just release year. And now that I finally got all that out of the way now, here it is, viewers. This is my top 11 most anticipated video games confirmed to release in the year 2022. Let's go.
In the gaming world, like in the movie world, there is undeniably no shortage of games with zombies in it. And with a lot of examples for zombie games, there could be something like franchise fatigue there. Me, to be honest, I've had a little of that, but there will be zombie games I'm looking forward to. Among them, Dying Light 2 Stay Human. The game is both developed and published by Techland themselves, who made Dead Island in 2011. I haven't played it, but I've heard that before release it was anticipated, but then it released and people were disappointed, and its sequel is now not only in development hell, but also being developed by someone else. So Techland went on to develop Dying Light, released in 2015 to both critical and commercial success, so definitely better reviews than Dead Island, so that kicks ass. But like Dead Island, I haven't played Dying Light, but I'm thinking about getting it on my gaming laptop, while I'm thinking about getting the sequel on my Xbox Series X, and if I get one, my PS5, so yeah, of course I'm looking forward to it. I mean, the graphics, the gameplay, the story, the combat, the open world, the animations, the weapons, the generically named city it takes place in, the fun atmosphere. I'm so frickin' hyped up for it, so when it comes out, there will at least be a chance I'm getting it right away, so that I'll kick the asses of the undead in the generically named city. Speaking of the city, Techland, you have only a little time left in order to come up with a good name for that European city before that game of yours releases, so hurry up and do it, please. Thanks. Back when I made my E3 2016 video in the middle of course, 2016, under the name The John Rocket, I mentioned Horizon Zero Dawn as one of my favorite games shown at that E3. Less than a year later, it came out, and the game lived up to the hype, at least to critics. Around half a year later, I finally bought and played it for the first time, and 4 years passed, and let me tell you, the game definitely did live up to my hype after all. So much so that it's also one of my favorite games of all frickin' time. So when I heard a sequel to the game was announced, I was hooked, and still am to this day. I mean, what's not to look forward to in the game? I think that is fixed now, so other than that as well. Okay, it may have 2 blemishes, but everything else is a-okay. The graphics are beautiful, the new machines are impressive, partially due to adding up more of the challenge. The new open world, the Forbidden West, which is located in post-apocalyptic California, Utah, and Nevada, is fun, probably due to its size, scope, atmosphere, and culture. I'm fine with the gameplay because it's at least different from the first one. I'm on board with the new and improved combat. I like what extra content the game has in its post-apocalyptic Western open world, and the story I am on board with. About it, it continues the story of Aylee, a young huntress of the Nora tribe, sent on a quest to the Forbidden West to find the source of a mysterious plague that kills all it infects. I like it because it expands the lore of the series well, and lastly, the game can take advantage of the PS5 hardware by having massive storms in the game as an example of that, making it another game that the PS5 can run but the PS4 can't, even though the game is coming out for the PS4, which in that case, it will be inferior to the PS5 version, that's all. Oh wait, if Horizon Zero Dawn isn't considered to be one of the best video games of all time, then it is more likely to be considered as one of the best video games published by Sony. I'm saying this because I think there's a chance that the follow-up will get better reception. If not, it will definitely get around as good of a reception as the first one did back when it first came out in 2017. Same goes to my opinion on the 2 games. On March 27, 2018, Square Enix got Last year in 2021, the Xbox brand got a sequel to a cult classic released years before it came out. That game is entitled Psychonauts 2, and it was critically beloved, even going so far as to getting a nomination for the 2021 Game Award for Game of the Year. And this year in 2022, the Xbox brand is getting another sequel to a cult classic that came out years before it did, and that game is entitled Stalker 2: Heart of Chernobyl. Similar to how Psychonauts 2 is published by Microsoft and developed by Microsoft's first-party developer, Stalker 2 is an Xbox exclusive if you count Microsoft's Windows platform. Not to mention, before release, I was hyped up for both of these game sequels to release. I'm on board with the gameplay, the scares, the plot, the cool post-apocalyptic open world, and of course, the graphics, which are powered by Unreal Engine 5, which for a next-gen version of a well-known game engine looks spectacular. However, I heard people are worried about the game because it will take inspiration from the Metro series of video games, because both are post-apocalyptic video games set in Eastern Europe. Both are developed by Ukrainian video game developers, and the developer of the Metro series, 4A Games, was funded by GSC Game World employees, and GSC Game World developed Stalker: Shadow of Chernobyl. Not to mention, THQ published both of these games when they first came out, with Metro 2033 coming out 3 years before THQ went out of business. Me personally, I think the Stalker sequel will be to the Metro games what Ori and the Will of the Wisps is to Hollow Knight, in which the game took inspiration from the other in order to compete. And well, regardless, I am so excited to return to post-apocalyptic Chernobyl after 15 years pass, and on Xbox. And dare I say it, it will even be better than the original, like Psychonauts 2 is than the original. Microsoft may not own Stalker like they do to Psychonauts, but I gotta say, Raz, say hello to your new friend, I don't know, the protagonist of the series, probably. Number 7 of this list is a Weird West game. For those of you who don't know what Weird West is, well, it's a term used for a genre that combines Western and the following 3 other genres: fantasy, horror, and science fiction. That game is the former of the 3, albeit a supernatural fantasy Western game. Weird West is also the title of that damn game, literally, which reminds me, if there are any more Weird West games after this, Devolver might as well change the title in the same way of title changes for Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Regardless, I'm still on board with the game. I mean, even the synopsis has some Weird West elements, as it has something to do with what the characters refer to as flesh eaters invading the Wild West and killing everyone. Not to mention, it will feature the stories of not 1 or 2, but 5 bounty hunters, and the world is designed to interact and respond to the player's actions. For example, an ammo box will explode if you shoot it. In terms of how it plays, the game is a top-down action RPG with immersive cinematics, with randomized elements to each playthrough, and the gameplay is similar to that of a twin-stick shooter, with the team over at Wolfeye Studios describing it as an action-y version of Fallout 1 or 2. Whether you're shooting stuff using your supernatural powers, being sneaky or whatever, the gameplay also has some Weird West elements, so there's that. And finally, actions in the game done by the player are permanent, meaning that they can't be undone through respawning. And on top of that, The game also features a permadeath mode in which the character and their companions will die permanently. For a Weird West game, its title summed up the game 100%. It is indeed weird, and I like it, especially the gameplay, so I'll expect gaming journalists to like the hell out of it, like I do when it releases. Moving from a game combining two different themes of entertainment to a game with not only two different people working on it, but also being written by one well-known person in the gaming world and one well-known person in a different medium. Not to mention, the former is directing the game as well, so yeah, From Software is making a Souls-like with Hidetaka Miyazaki directing the game and who was once called the American Tolkien, George Raymond Richard Martin writing it. So yeah, I am of course talking about Elden Ring in this entry. Write down the fact that it won the Game Award for Most Anticipated Game 2 years in a row, so damn, it must be that special, regardless of a possibility that the host of the Game Awards, Jeff Keighley, gave that award to the game 2 years in a row out of joy that the gaming industry is getting more recognition with people from other media joining in on the project, but whatever. Regardless, what's not to get excited about the game? That's just an opinion from PC Gamer, not me, so ignore it. To be honest, everything. I mean, the improved open world, the challenge, the rest of the gameplay, the graphics, man, is this going to be a masterpiece? But here's one thing I didn't talk about, the story. About it, I think it has some elements from Hidetaka Miyazaki's Dark Souls and some elements from George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones, I think. Taking place in the realm of the Lands Between, sometime after the titular Elden Ring was destroyed with its shards, the great runes being scattered, the realm is now ruled by the offspring of Queen Marika the Eternal, each possessing a shard of the ring that corrupts and taints them with power, so it is up to you to traverse the realm to ultimately find all the great runes, restore the Elden Ring, and become the Elden Lord as a tarnished, an exile from the Lands Between, who lost the ring's grace. Like I said, it is somewhat like that of Dark Souls, and I love it. I have heard that this game is a spiritual successor to From Software's own Dark Souls series of games, explaining the similarities with the plot, gameplay, and publishers and developers. But what a spiritual successor it will be. I can now see why that game won the Game Award for Most Anticipated Game 2 years in a row. It's not number one in this list because of following entries in it I'm more excited for, don't get me wrong, but I am really on board with this one. When it releases, not only is there a chance it will be considered by game journalists to be From Software's best game, but it will also be one of, if not the single, most critically acclaimed spiritual successor video game of all time. So yeah, of course I'm thinking about getting the game right after it releases for both the PS5 and Xbox Series X, like Dying Light 2, another game with an entry on this list, so that's both of these games down, and now in general, there are 5 more to go. Three entries ago, I mentioned that Psychonauts 2 is published by Microsoft, but the truth is, that ain't always the case. You see, after the announcement of the game's crowdfunding campaign through Fig at the Game Awards 2015, it was initially to be published by Starbreeze Studios under a publishing-only deal, before Starbreeze went bankrupt in 2018. The following year in 2019 is when Microsoft steps in. They acquired the game's in-series developer, Double Fine, as part of Xbox Game Studios and secured the publishing rights from Starbreeze. The acquisition allowed Double Fine to complete the game as envisioned, rather than dropping the planned content, eventually releasing the game in 2021 as a successful game, especially critically, proving the good treatment by Microsoft to Double Fine after buying them out. I'm talking about a 2021 game in that entry because I think Microsoft is doing the same to Bethesda. I think this because of how sure I am for Microsoft's quality control of the company after the infamous Fallout 76. And let me tell you, viewers, that is where that game's developer's next project, Starfield, comes in. To begin with, I am so excited for a Bethesda game to take place in outer space. By the way, not only is The Outer Worlds not made by Bethesda whatsoever, but I also think Starfield will at least be a bit different from it. Same goes for the premise. Send the settled systems approximately 50 light years from the solar system in 2330, 20 years after the Colony War. The two largest factions in the game, the United Colonies and Freestar Collective, enjoy an uneasy peace. Like other Bethesda Game Studios games, you play in a first or third-person perspective and play as a customizable character who just so happens to be a member of an organization of space explorers named Constellation. The open worlds excited me both due to how big they are and their atmospheres, whether it's a jungle, an alien world, a thrilling city on a planet, a crystal cave, or whatever the game can use for an open world. Oh, and you do know that I said that I am sure of Microsoft's better quality control of Bethesda, right? Well, the game's engine, the Creation Engine 2, could be a reason for that. I'm hoping it will not only polish the game more, but also make the graphics look better. Finally, I am looking forward to the sci-fi of the game, and how different it is from other sci-fi games already released. Lead artist Istvan Pelli dubbed it as NASA punk, as in, while set in humanity's future, the technology in the game can be traced to origins in various NASA space missions, because I think the team over at Bethesda are making the game to ask, and now man is living amongst the stars. What does that mean? I think I like it, as it fits the theme a lot, because not only are both classic NASA stories in the real world and NASA stories in the game both have something to do with uneasy peace, but also the theme has something to do with what the human race will do next, now that it finally reached the final frontier in terms of colonization. I mean, sure, there will still be more in the universe to explore at that point in this story, but I digress. People may be excited for The Elder Scrolls 6 to come out in the future, but if you want it to be released so bad right away, here's the thing. It is expected to be released after Starfield, with a probable addition of both Avowed by Obsidian and the Fable reboot by Playground Games, so you have to be waiting for these three games to come out first before Elder Scrolls 6, like I do to Starfield. Heck, I even think the game could get better reception than Skyrim, becoming the most critically acclaimed title by Bethesda when it launches, albeit on November 11th, 2022, 11 years after Skyrim. I think Bethesda's first IP in over 25 years will be a love letter to the gamers who enjoyed Bethesda's games a lot. And there you have it, viewers, another prediction of mine about Microsoft's good treatment of a studio they acquired. I know it's still in development now, Microsoft, but don't blow it. In fact, I think you can do it. Keep up the good work, Microsoft. Keep up the good work, indeed.
What I'm going to begin this entry with will surprise you viewers, but here it goes. As fantastic as Starfield will be in my opinion, it's actually not Bethesda's #1 game on this list.
That's right, viewers. Bethesda Softworks is publishing a game I'm more anticipated for in 2022 than Starfield. However, if you're confused about the companies who made the two games, then let me get this straight. Starfield may not be Bethesda Softworks' #1 game on this list, but it is Bethesda Game Studios' #1 title on this list, so that entry is Bethesda Softworks' #1 game on this list. It's just that this one is being developed by a different company. We got it now? Good. Anyways, if you want to know who that different developer is, well, here's a hint. It only developed 2 titles as of now. It's 2 titles being the Evil Within game. So, if you're answering Tango Gameworks, then you're right. So yes, it is Ghostwire Tokyo, and I sure as hell am hyped up for it like y'all already. In the game, otherworldly spirits, known as visitors, invade Tokyo after almost all of the city's citizens mysteriously vanished, with the main protagonist, Akito, being among the people who didn't vanish. It's up to him, with his supernatural powers, to combat the spirits haunting the city and encounter a group wearing Hanya masks who may unveil the mystery behind the strange events in Tokyo. Unlike the 2 Evil Within games, both of which are played from a third-person perspective, Ghostwire Tokyo is played from a first-person perspective, as the player can use various psychic and paranormal abilities to kick ghostly asses haunting Tokyo. Combat director Shinichiro Hara described the combat as karate meets magic, as you utilize hand movements inspired by Ujikiri hand gestures to cast spells. Not to mention, when an enemy loses almost all of its health, its core is exposed, so that you can use takedown moves to destroy it in order to defeat the spirit. So I describe the combat as karate meets the elements of Bioshock and Doom. Not only am I on board with the story, gameplay, and relationship between the two, but I also like the horror and art style of the game. You'll find stuff like laughing girls and the faces and bodies of the spirits invading Tokyo to be scary. And in terms of art style, I think elements from the looks of the spirits to tricks like visual glitches seem to range from Japanese folklore to modern Japanese culture, such as LSD Dream Emulator, which, to be fair, is made in Japan. In terms of video games that revolve around the culture of a particular place, I think Ghostwire Tokyo does a pretty good job in following the spirit of Japanese culture, albeit with horror elements mixed in. Whether I'm on board with the combat, story, and horror, and how faithful it is to Japanese culture, with the art style and combat, it may not be Bethesda Softworks' most critically acclaimed release, but it will certainly be right up there with these 2 Elder Scrolls games, these 2 Fallout games, these 2 Doom games, and of course, the aforementioned Starfield. So I'm now thinking about getting both of these games for these systems right when they launch. And since the latter is being made by a Japanese studio and takes place in what is the largest city and capital of Japan, I gotta say, I think it will make the studio's founder, Shinji Mikami of Resident Evil fame, very proud. So now that's actually 4 of those games down, and now in general, there are 3 more to go. Sweet. Similar to how I liked Horizon Zero Dawn, both at E3 2016 and after its release back in 2017, another open-world game released in 2017, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, I liked both at E3 2016 and after its release back in that year, albeit less than a week after Horizon Zero Dawn. But let me tell you, viewers, both games are two of my favorite video games of all freaking time. And if you ask me which game I like more, then I'll say Breath of the Wild, so yes, I am with the Gaming Press and Game Awards on that one. To make one last comparison to Horizon Zero Dawn, I'm making a comparison between the game's sequels. Both are releasing in 2022, I'm highly anticipating for both of them to release, and I'm picking the Zelda game over the Horizon one, albeit for a good reason. This game will be freaking amazing. I mean, the graphics, the gameplay, the open world, Princess Zelda's sexy as appearance in the game, what's not to love? I'm also fond of its inspiration from previous Zelda titles, such as Majora's Mask, with its darker tone and similarities to its direct predecessor, and Skyward Sword, with its intended scope and vision and a setting on the skies above Hyrule. I'm also fond of the game's new direction it's taking to the series, as the developers, inspired by leftover ideas from the prior game's development and DLC packs, will utilize the original game's world with a new story and gameplay elements. Overall, viewers, do I really need to say more about the game? I think everything I said about it, other than my comparison of this game to Horizon Forbidden West, summed it up perfectly. I not only think it will be another fantastic entry in the Zelda series, but it will also be considered one of the series' best. Hell, it will even go right up there with the likes of Starfield and Elden Ring in terms of the best games of the year in 2022, if not all time. By the way, I just now realized that out of all of these 4 best game comparisons, the first one of them is probably an understatement. Dang it.
Number 4 of this list, this one will surprise you, but here it goes anyway. As awesome as the Breath of the Wild sequel will be, it actually ain't Nintendo's number 1 entry in this list.
That's right, viewers. Nintendo is publishing a game I'm more excited for this year in 2022 than that Zelda sequel. It's just that Nintendo is also developing the Zelda sequel, but not that game, in order to not confuse you. One more thing, viewers, that other developer is also headquartered in Japan, so if you pay attention to this list and its game's details, are you noticing a pattern here? Because I think I am. Anyways, that other developer just so happens to be Platinum Games, and if you think Bayonetta 3, then you're right. So, how am I more excited for Bayonetta 3 than the Zelda game, you ask? I think it's pretty much everything, really. The combat, the gameplay, Bayonetta's sexy as appearance in the game, they pretty much say it all. In terms of gameplay, I like that you're also combating bigger or more complicated enemies with the help of something like your spirit animal, whether it's a dark-ass dragon that can also slide, a spider with a scorpion's tail in order to sting foes, and a bird that can use a tornado attack. Sweet. I wonder if Platinum is inspired by the likes of Cameo, Blue Dragon, and Persona 5, because it seems to me that the game took some elements from these games and mixed them in with their signature gameplay in order for it to look unique. In terms of Bayonetta herself, not only is she the same Bayonetta we all know and love inside, but for her appearance, She may not look as hot as she did back in Bayonetta 1 and 2, but she's still rocking her jumpsuit, new hairdo, and new skirt. And then there's a new character that only appeared at the end of the game's gameplay trailer. To be honest, I've only heard of the Bayonetta games, but not played any of them, so I think that new character is either Luca, someone else, or I don't know, even Dante from Devil May Cry, but I definitely think it won't be Jean, because I'm sure she looks different than that. However, I have heard that people are worried about the game's development hell. Yeah, you heard it right. The game is officially in development hell or something like that. Technically, the game was first announced back at the Game Awards 2017 with a teaser, and before the game's gameplay trailer came out back in late September 2021, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Due to this, people were worried that Bayonetta 3 would suffer the same fate as other games in development hell, like Duke Nukem Forever when it comes out. Me, I only see that with the obvious clue. And that's it, because I think everything else is A-OK. Or more specifically, more than A-OK. Amazing. All that aside, I think Bayonetta 3 will be an awesome game, especially in the reviews, so I don't think it will suck when it releases, I hope. If it won't get at least as good of a reception as the Zelda game, it will definitely be right up there with it.
Okay, now we have one more game in this list. But before moving on to other things, a hint will be that that game, like Bayonetta 3, has something to do with the hack and slash genre. However, there are two more things. A recap of this list so far and honorable mentions. But first the recap, and here it goes. Number 11, Dying Light 2, Stay Human. Number 10, Horizon Forbidden West. Number 9, Forspoken. Number 8, Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl. Number 7, Weird West. Number 6, Elden Ring. Number 5, Starfield. Number 4, Ghostwire Tokyo. Number 3, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild sequel. And number 2, Bayonetta 3. Now for the honorable mentions in this list. To be honest, I have 9 of them, so I'll now stop talking and list them all, so here you go.
Now let's move on to number 1.
Now, viewers, if you kept that hint about my number 1 spot in this list in your heads, then let me tell you this. If your answer is God of War the whole time, then you're right. So yeah, number 1 in my list is God of War Ragnarok after all. That's right, viewers. Out of all the games in this list, counting my honorable mentions, that God of War game is my most anticipated of the year. God of War Ragnarok? More like God of this list, I think. Anyways, where to begin now? I have an idea. Before talking about my anticipation of the game, let's briefly talk about the series before then, okay? Okay.
Anyways, back in the PS2 era, when Sony wanted to capitalize on the maturing gaming market, they released God of War for the system, followed by one sequel for the same system, and a threequel for the PS3. The trilogy of Greek mythology games made Kratos an unofficial PlayStation mascot, like Nathan Drake and Sackboy. I only played the first 2 games of the trilogy, but I love the heck out of them. Then 6 years after the release of the 3rd game in the trilogy, or at the time, Kratos' latest chronological rampage, when it looks like the series can't go any further now that the entire Greek pantheon is wiped out, Sony unveiled a new God of War game set in Norse mythology. As anticipated as that game was, including by me, as shown in my E3 2017 video under the John Rocket name, I was confused on how Kratos switched mythologies, but that didn't matter to Sony because not only was the 2018 PS4 game critically acclaimed when it first came out, but it also won the 2018 Game Award for Game of the Year, beating Celeste, Spider-Man for the PS4, and even Red Dead Redemption 2. Dang. I honestly haven't played the 2018 game either, but I'm really looking forward to playing it, partially for the game's synopsis, and for a video game in general. If you're asking me for a comparison, that's where the series' next outing, God of War Ragnarok, comes in. I think it could be better than its predecessor. If not, then it will certainly be right up there with it. Taking place 3 years after its predecessor, which ends right when Fimbulwinter is almost over, the game will cover the era after Fimbulwinter, Ragnarok, a series of events that bring about the end of days and depict the deaths of the Norse gods, hence the subtitle Ragnarok. Meanwhile, Kratos' son Atreus is now a teenager and is still reeling from the revelations of the game's predecessor. He seeks answers about his identity as Loki, with the addition of a way to prevent Ragnarok from happening. In order to uncover the truth, Kratos and his son set out to find answers and search for the giant Norse god of war Tyr, who was previously believed to be deceased. While traveling the 9 realms, however, they must face new threats, including Thor, the enraged god of thunder, and Freya, their former friend and ally, both of whom seek revenge after their respective sons were killed by Kratos. I think that story kicks ass. I like the depiction of Ragnarok in the game, and I like the allegories of how enraged and vengeful both Thor and Freya are. It's due to the connections with the fury and vengeance Kratos had in the Greek mythology games after he accidentally killed his family somewhat. Not to mention Thor's a god, so I think I like where this is going. And then there's the relationship between Atreus and Kratos in the game's predecessor. I think they get along with each other on the journey, but here, let's say less. A clue of that is his age in the game, so he must be having some daddy issues there. And I think this will be a good daddy issues game, like Hades and Castlevania Symphony of the Night, the former of which, by the way, is also set in a mythological world, so I think they're even. I'm also a fan of the gameplay. More weapons are added to Kratos' arsenal, including the ones he got from the Greek mythology world, thus adding diversity to the game, which reminds me that more about Kratos' past back in ancient Greece will be explained here, including how he switched mythologies. Like I said, I haven't played the PS4 game, but even then, I think I'll get more evidence of his transition in the 9th gen sequel, and because we might be seeing elements from both the Greek and Norse mythologies in this one game, let's say that it will kick ass. I'm also fond of the characters, the one-shot cinematography, the combat, the colors, and the graphics. The colors at least sum up what's going on in this game, and the graphics are so goddamn awesome. You know that this game covers what is actually the end of days in Norse mythology, serving as a finale to the Norse era of the series. If that's true, then I think that will end the series, unless there are more ideas to keep the series going. Either way, what a finale it will be, or more accurately, what a new God of War game it will be. I mean, the gameplay, combat, story, characters, graphics, everything. If it won't be better than its predecessor, then it will definitely be considered to be one of the greatest video games of all time, along with Starfield, Elden Ring, and the next Zelda game. Not to mention, I think it will kick a lot of asses like its main character when it comes out. Out of all the games I put on this list, I think there's a chance that this one will kick the most ass when it comes out. And when you combine everything I said about this game, that is saying a lot, so yeah. Definitely my most anticipated video game to definitely come out in the year 2022.
And there you have it, viewers. My 11 most anticipated games of 2022 and my first top 10 list in this channel. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. And now, tell me your opinion on these games and what your most anticipated games of 2022 are. Let me know in the comments. And one more thing. I have heard of Elon Musk's relationship with Starfield and the details he gave about the game. Well, since the game is going to be published by Microsoft, I'm going to see if Elon prefers PlayStation or Xbox. It's Xbox. It's because he only plays the Halo series on consoles, so both of us are alike because we both prefer Xbox over PlayStation. Heh.